Once again, got their attention second time. Good evening, everyone. We're about to start this special call meeting of July 23rd, 2024. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, follow that by the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn and face them out.
Clearing of the
Yeah,
public purse.
all the details.
Yeah, Eagle was clearing of the public purse.
Eagle has back turned.
All right, Mr. Daniels is with us by phone tonight, and so the microphones may sound a little bit different. So board members, when you're speaking, be sure to speak into the mic so that Andy will be able to hear us. Before we move on to the presentation that Dr. Lankford has for us tonight, we're going to hear from our public that would like to speak. I'll call your name, you'll come up and give your name and address for the record. And you'll have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item. And there's only one thing on the agenda, so we know what you're going to speak about. So first person is Susan Sanders. If you'll come down to this mic up here, give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item.
Okay, is it on? All right. My name is Susan Saunders, 316 Spring Valley Drive, Cottontown, Tennessee. And as you said, there's only one item on the agenda. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Last year, I was a teaching assistant at one of our elementary schools. This year, I'm transitioning into a middle school as a teacher on an alternate route. But I'm here tonight because I want to urge the board to stand firm and to stand firm on the item of raises for both certified and for classified staff. The meetings I've listened to, both for the board and for the county, they've referenced and spoke about the need for teacher raises, but I'm here to say that also the staff, the classified staff, have been overlooked for far too long, and it's time that these wages and individuals receive an equitable and reasonable wage. Our classified staff are real people. They have families that depend on those wages. And as you know, an average of $12.78 is not a reasonable wage. I agree teacher wages are important. By far, they're vital to the education of our children and to the future of our community. But I would challenge you to think about what our schools would look like without our paraprofessionals and our classified staff. This group of individuals staff the workrooms at our schools to keep the materials for the teachers each day. They arrive prior to school, work after hours. They, after school ends, they manage the bus lanes. They manage to get the children on to the car riders. If you've never been in elementary school when they dismiss, you've got 500 children going in 10 minutes, moving pieces that are managed primarily by the classified staff. It's organized chaos at its best. They staff the lunchrooms, they assist and move these children in and out in a timely manner. They go from class to class, they help those children that are struggling, they help the children that have special needs so that they can also be successful. Our classified staff transport students to and from school every day. They keep our school buildings clean, they keep our school buildings tidy. This group of individuals deserves reasonable wages. And for too long, they've been overlooked and have not been recognized as a vital part of the school system. I appreciate Dr. Langford and the work that he has done to change the salary structure for the schools in Sumner County. And with these considerations, I urge you to stand firm on this section of the school budget to make the right decision on behalf of these families and constituents that you represent and that live in our county. I would say put the pressure back to the county commission and let them feel the heat. Thank you.
Thank you, Saunders. Next is Charlene Oliver.
Good evening. I'm Charlene O'Miller at 143 Roland Circle, Hendersonville, Tennessee 37075. And I'm just here to speak that I would hope that you approve the budget with the $5.4 million extra for the stadium, the athletic facilities, as well as the $7.5 million in continuing funds and the maintenance of effort from the commission. Thus far, the county commission has not heard the budget. Any signals that we've gotten from any commissioners have been through committees or through somebody who's been speaking here or post on Facebook. So I'm very pleased to see that they are signaling that they're at least positive towards most of the budget. But I think instead of negotiating against yourselves, let the county commission make the decision whether they're going to fund the athletic facilities that the community has indicated that they want. And then just watch closely the timing, because you just don't want to get backed up to that August 31st timeline. I know that some people have talked about how the reserves are always over, and as an accountant, you can't always look at historical experience as to what is going to happen this year. Hopefully they will be over, but I will say that our state laws are set up to where you are never under reserves, that you are always getting a little bit over. You're always trying to get a little bit over, because that means that you budgeted conservatively and you conservatively budgeted your revenue. And by doing that, then you can spend those excess reserves the following year, which is what is being done in this budget. This budget that is before you tonight has $56 million from reserves from prior years. So to try to sit there and say that there is enough in the reserves whenever you've seen the numbers in front of you, and the revenues, they are what they are. They come from the county commission, or the county, they come from the county finance director. It would be illegal for the schools to actually just make up the revenues. So they are what they are. You can't just say that you're going to budget the expenses at $100 and then assume that you can subsidize it with $20 at the end of the year because you didn't spend $100, but then get approval for $100. I mean, that's just the basics of how math works. So I do hope that you approve the budget, and I know this is really heady and accounting and everything, but let the county commission have the opportunity to decide if they want to fund it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. That concludes our public speaking tonight, and so we will turn it over to Dr. Langford.
All right, thank you, Chairman Brewer. Let me start with a couple of things. If you notice, your budgets are hot off the press, hot off the press. Ms. Brown and her team, I'll go through the process a little bit, but we met with Chairman Schoaf and Mr. Lawing and Mayor Isbell yesterday at 2 o'clock. We met for about 2 hours to work through what we're proposing tonight. And if you've noticed, there's no such thing as an easy change to a budget. One change results in about 5.5 hours of changes. So we wanted to take a moment tonight and kind of walk through. I apologize, ideally, if we weren't so time sensitive, we'd love to have days and days for you to be able to look over this and ponder it. It takes a lot on Ms. Brown's team to get everything and check it and verify, make sure it's correct before we send it to the commission. But there really aren't a ton of changes, so I will walk through the changes that are there, and I'm going to have Ms. Brown jump in when we get to page 8 about our reserves, because she tried to explain it to me, and I realized about 45 seconds into her explaining it that I would never in 10 million years be able to explain this. So I understand it, but I can't put it into words the same way she does, because it's very technical based on when we reduce the money that we're receiving, it changes some of those reserve funds. She'll be able to walk through that a little bit clearer. But I wanted to start off high level and just kind of go through what we're looking at. I will say as we get started, a couple things today. We got to start. We had new teacher orientation today. We had about 300 new teachers there. 54% are through job embedded. If you want to see the investment that we're making in Teach Sumner and where that's heading in the future, if you want to connect it to the direct budget that we have tonight, really excited for the work that our Teach Sumner team has done because we have way fewer vacancies. I saw where a large district in Tennessee and Shelby County had like 1,100 openings, and we are in really good shape. 30 openings right now for teachers. Three resource openings. Still, are we good? 3 pre-K. Okay? So we're in much better shape than we've been in a long, long time in terms of staffing. And that's directly connected to the budget. Also, I saw Senator Hale walking around out there somewhere. Is he still here? Okay. Appreciative to Senator Hale. I was talking to Chairman Leader Lamberth last night, and we were discussing that over the last decade, the legislature has sent right around $100 million of extra funding to our schools, and we're very thankful for that, including $88 million and I think $15 million in our CTE grants with our Innovative School Model grants. So we're very thankful for that because that shifts the burden off to Sumner County taxpayers. All right, so let me run through. We've shown this at every presentation. How do we make the decisions about how we build the budget? As you can tell from this document, it's monumental. In fact, some people, Miss Brown and I have spent so many hours looking. I've spent nowhere near the hours that she has, but we've almost developed a nonverbal form of communication about budget numbers. But this is the one question that guides us that we come back to time and time again. How are we providing the best pre-K through 12th grade education for all Sumner County students? That should guide every decision that we're making. We've read through these, so I'll go through this really quickly. What are our Sumner Ready budget goals? Remember, when we're talking Sumner Ready, we're tasked when a child walks into our school at either pre-K or kindergarten, we are tasked in that 13 or 14 years to prepare them for their first and their future careers. And so we want to invest. This is what guided us this year as we prepared our budget. Invest in preparing students for their future and first career, provide opportunities for students to learn in real world settings. I can't wait. Ms. Skinner's team has a presentation in September. Once we get this budget done and approved, we're going to get to turn back to the work that we enjoy doing on the school board side, and that's seeing the direct effect and impact of the dollars that we budget on our students. We got some really exciting things coming for, especially in high school. Increase compensation for all staff, address critical school facility needs, and continue to innovate as a school district. Okay, so I want to talk about some budget realities, right? And I want to try part of the tenor of the presentation tonight, because we got a lot of people here tonight and we got a lot of people watching at home. And I want to try to do the best we can. I don't know if y'all have noticed this or not, but Sumner County politics over the last couple of years have been pretty contentious. So what we want to try to do is just share. We had an incredibly productive meeting with Mr. Shove yesterday. He's been a great partner for us to work with over the last few months. And so I want to try to share some things just as everybody here has the opportunity to share things out and speak about where we are. Okay, so the recommended tax rate for the 2024-2025 year will most likely be the certified neutral tax rate. Let me explain that for a minute. Tennessee has a unique system. It's really problematic and unfair to county commissions, because basically what they do is when you do a tax reappraisal like this year, you take the value of all the properties in Sumner County and you set a tax rate that gives you the amount of revenue from last year. So you catch no inflation. There were an astronomical number of appeals, because I don't know about you, you got a little sticker shock when you opened your appraisal. Mine was up 77%. So a lot of people thought that would result in a tax increase for them, and so they appealed their home valuation. Actually, you want your home valuation to be as high as it can possibly be, because that's one of your primary investments in life. So that does not mean that you're getting a tax increase. The state or the tax assessor sets a certified neutral tax rate that generates the amount of revenue from last year. Okay, what's lost in that is inflation, which is high right now. Also lost in that is we will generally lose about a penny worth of tax revenue in the appeals process, because typically you go to the appraiser and you say, my property was valued at $500,000. I don't think it's worth that. I think it's worth $400,000, and he'll say, I think it's worth $475,000. I'm dramatically oversimplifying this process. Eventually, y'all will agree on a number. There's a committee that you can appeal it to, and they will set your tax rate, and then that goes into the books. Never, ever has anyone appealed it and gone in and said, your appraisal says it's worth $500,000, but shoot, as we look at it, we actually think it's worth $550,000. Shouldn't have appealed. It always goes down, it never goes up. So what happens is you lose some revenue in that process. Usually that equates to about a penny. So 2014, when we set the tax rate, a penny was worth right around $480,000. In 2019, it jumped to about $680,000. This year, a penny is worth, so I haven't seen the final number. Preliminary estimates I heard were somewhere between 1.1 and 1.2 million. So we will lose about $1.1, $1.2 million in revenue over the next year just in appeals, where that's regulated. So just understand that when you set that certified neutral tax rate, you're actually generating less real revenue than you did the year before. Typically, we only set that once every 5 years. But I would anticipate, like, I think that'll be a 24-0 vote on the commission, that they will set the tax rate at the certified neutral tax rate. So let me say this, regardless of the valuation of your home, your county taxes will not go up this year. And this budget is built without requiring the county to increase taxes, okay? I want to show you how we get there in just a second. The county still has $13 million, over $13 million in unallocated capital at their disposal, okay? So there's $13 million sitting there that has not been allocated by the commission. I want to clear this up because I've heard this a lot when I've been at county commission meetings. I've heard this phrase, we gave them $15.8 million in the fall and they haven't done anything with it. They did not give us $15.8 million in the fall. We moved $15.8 million from reserves, school system reserves, into capital accounts and then later some operational accounts so that we could begin the planning process for our athletic facilities. But then later we moved $2 million back to cover the cost of the rental bleachers that are up now at Hendersonville Beach in Portland. Okay, so where are we? All right, I want to make this clear because local politics is sometimes really confusing. You don't know how important it is until you run into it in something like an athletic facility, like the stadium collapse from last year. All of a sudden, then everybody starts paying attention, and it's hard to track. Like, what is the responsibility of the school board, and what is the responsibility of the county commission? Okay, the school board's responsibility. School board members, the 11 people up here on the platform, were elected to represent the 11 districts in Sumner County. So in that, they are constitutionally elected officers. As a body, the school board is a constitutionally elected officer, like the sheriff, like the trustee, like the mayor. And as such, the school board is entrusted to present a school budget to the county commission. Okay, so it's within the 11 people up here's right to determine what that school budget is. The county commission is also constitutionally elected, and they are the financial, funding partner for the school system. So it is their job to vote up or down on the school budget. They do not have line item veto authority. All they can do is accept or reject the budget. Okay, so May 14th, there was a study session here at the school board. Ms. Brown, myself, Ms. Brown, her team, we shared the proposed budget, and it was approved by the Sumner County Board. Okay, it was presented on the 14th. It was approved on the 21st. Okay, that budget went over to the County Commission Budget Committee, and it was rejected and sent back to us. On June 18th, the school board approved a revised budget that reduced spending or expenditures by about $2 million, and we sent that back to the County Commission. All right, on July 15th, the Education Committee recommended passage of the proposed school budget. The Budget Committee rejected the budget with a call for a reduction of $5.4 million. It was at this point at this meeting that Commissioner Schoaf offered his amendment to send the budget back to us, asking us to pull out $5.4 million, and then proposing that the commission use some of that unallocated capital money to give us $5.4 million in non-recurring capital to help with our athletic facilities and other capital project needs. Okay, that amendment lost, and so what actually the recommendation from the budget committee was to cut the $5.4 million. Okay, so tonight we're in the midst of a special called school board meeting. As I mentioned earlier, in a year where you have as many appeals as we've had, the tax assessor was unable to get the certified neutral tax rate to the commission in time for them to notice for the July 29th commission meeting. Okay, there are a lot of laws that require 10 days notice for setting the tax rate, considering a budget. So the county commission, this is through no fault of their own, it's just the law. They could not notice the tax rate, so they cannot consider budgets on July 29th. Okay, so the initial proposal, if you watch the video from the last budget workshop on July 15th, there was a recommendation to set the county commission meeting in August for August 26th. We've asked for, and Mayor Isbell has agreed to call a special called commission meeting on August 12th. By the 2012 Act, which is the financial agreement between the commission and the school board authorized by the state legislature, we are allowed to present our budget directly on the floor of the commission. The 2012 Act specifies with 2 rejections in committee, we can take it directly to the floor of the county commission. And so that is our plan. What we pass tonight will be noticed in the paper with the other county budgets, and will go to the floor of the county commission on August 12th. Okay? So, as I stated, if we approve a budget tonight, the soonest it can be considered is August 12th. There are, you have to catch the Tennessean. That's the fastest way to notice the budget. It requires 10 calendar days. So if you look at the lead time to get in the newspaper, and this is state law, there's no way around it, I hope that at some point we can update state law and use online notifications on newspaper, because they're much faster. But right now, the law is the law, and it requires a full paper notification. So the soonest, if you count those calendar days and weekends and everything, that puts us at August 12th. All right, so what's at stake without an approved budget? It delays our people receiving raises. Okay, raises will be received retroactively. I want to be really clear to our employees and our staff. You will not lose the money from July 1st until whenever a budget is approved. Okay, as soon as we get a budget approved, Ms. Brown and her team will start working on a payroll to go out to employees to catch their retroactive pay. So they will not lose pay, but they will not receive the raises that we've approved on May 21st and in June until we have a budget approved by the county commission. So they will be received retroactively, but our employees are counting on these raises ASAP. But Mr. Wise pointed out last time, a teacher in his district who is waiting to purchase a home, and they cannot qualify for the mortgage until they get this raise. So I think it's really important as we move forward here, and I would encourage the commission the same way. Don't get caught in the politics. Don't get caught in the noise of social media. Let's ask what's best for our people, and let's do the very best we can to get a budget passed as quickly as possible. All right, I wanted to run through, because there have been a lot of questions. We're actually going to release all the salary schedules tonight for our employees. We couldn't get that. I'd hoped to have all those printed out for you tonight. We just couldn't turn that around and get the budget done. But we will post those online for all of our employees to see. So we wanted to go through and show what this means for our employees, and not just for first-year employees. So if you're an elementary bookkeeper, your salary would raise in year 1 to $17.06 an hour, and that equates to almost $6,400 a year. Year 5, that goes to $18.47, that's $7,212 a year. Year 10, $20.24 an hour, $8,019 a year. So that's the increase. So this is a significant increase in the pay that our employees are receiving. For a teaching assistant, an office clerk, or an attendance clerk, you can see those numbers there. $16.32 for year one. That equates to about $5,533 increase in a year. $17.67 an hour for year 5, $19.36 an hour for year 10. Notice that while this is a great thing for our classified employees, notice that even at year 10, we're just slightly above what people are making at Chick-fil-A right now. So we've still got a ways to go, but this is a big step in the right direction. CDC assistant, resource assistant, goes to $18.24 an hour. That's about $5,161 a year. Up to year 10, $21.64 an hour, about $6,500 a year. School nutrition staff. All right, school nutrition staff is staffed at a whole lot of different hour variations. These numbers reflect a 7-hour school nutrition position. $17.06 an hour, $5,400 a year. Up to year 10, $20.24 an hour, $6,772 a year. Bus drivers scheduled for 5 hours a day, $22.28. Year one is about $25.50 a year. $26.44 an hour is $32.46 a year. Notice that this is for 5 hours versus 7 or 8 hours, and that catches some of the difference in pay. Okay, what does this mean for a classroom teacher? A teacher in year one, it's an increase of $2,200. Remember, we split the difference. Next year, by law, we'll go to $50,000 as a minimum. But that takes it, splitting the difference between where we were and where we're going is $2,200. For a teacher with a bachelor's degree and 5 years experience, it's an increase of $3,115. Year 10, it goes up $3,263. That's added to their base pay. Okay, so it's a $3,263 raise based to whatever they're making now. Okay, I would also point out here, remember that since January of 2020, teacher pay has gone up $11,700 when these go into effect. So we've made a significant move on our teacher pay. This year in our compensation study, we realized we need to make a big jump on classified staff pay because their pay is lagged behind. So this puts, when we get this done, this will put teachers, certified staff and classified staff since 2020 both being about a 35% pay increase. So really, for those that are watching at home or watching those, this is something that our school board really deserves to be commended for. This is a substantial increase, and I think you see it reflected in our staffing. Okay, special education teachers, behavior teachers, R.T. Fisher certified staff. So basically you take the raises from the previous slide and add $10,000 to it. Remember, our special ed teachers, other teachers, in addition to teaching, are picking up a caseload of usually between 20 and 25 students. And they're giving up a significant number of their planning periods during the day for meetings and other support for their students. And so this is a pay differentiator based on extra work that's being done during the day. It's also proven to be a very effective recruiting method for us because we fill jobs. Usually at this point of the summer, Miss Dam is nearly in tears, and she's threatening to make all of us go cover classes because we're so short. Her board is almost completely empty, where in years past we've had 25, 30 positions open. So it's very exciting for our, that's going to result in better services for our special education students. You know, sometimes we get lost in the meetings and things like that, but understand those meetings are set to make sure that our students are receiving the services that they need to level the playing field and help them achieve at a high level. The more staff that we have in special education, obviously the better service they're going to be able to provide to our students. So what's at stake without an approved budget? Currently, we're on a continuation budget. We cannot spend capital dollars right now. Currently, we're waiting to order 50 AEDs. There's a new state law that's out that requires, that changes the number of AEDs we need to have in each location. It also, you know, we have some that we need to replace for wear and tear, and we're constantly trying to expand our health services for our students. And this isn't just for our students. Those AEDs are invaluable when we have sporting events and other things if someone goes into cardiac arrest. I had the opportunity of speaking to our school nurses this morning. They were having their opening kickoff meeting today. When Ms. Heron started, we had 21 nurses. Now we have 60. So it's exciting because, again, it's not just the numbers, we have more services to take care of our kids. Our students today have more need in terms of medical conditions and more severe needs than we've ever seen as a school system, and I'm thankful for the 60 nurses that we have. We were able to honor one. I can't go into great detail about what she did because we have to protect HIPAA privacy laws, but one of our nurses happened to be at one of our schools after school for football practice, and a young man collapsed, and had the school nurse not been there, he would have died. So middle school boy is alive today because, what's that? The AED and the nurse saved his life. So this is not just a budget. This is something that means real things for the safety and security of our students. School buses, we can't order school buses until while we're on continuation. Phase 2 of our window film project. We did Miss Brown, the other Miss Brown, Katie Brown. Her team led a training for basically all of our administrators have been through a training now on how to prepare for school shootings. The training was really amazing. They actually fired a long gun and a handgun in the school so the participants would know the sound and the smell. Both are very distinctive. They went through almost every mass shooting event that's happened in the last 10 years, including Las Vegas, including Covenant, including a shooting of an individual at a school in Washington, a college in Washington. And they walked through not only that, they walked through what to do if someone has a loaded weapon in the school, like ways to disarm them. They went through how to treat sucking chest wounds and apply a tourniquet and things like that. It partially alarms me because I received that training in basic training for combat. But if you follow, I thought one of the things they told that was really telling at the Nevada shooting, a significant number of people were shot, and most of those people survived because the first responders and the police officers there had all been trained in how to administer tourniquets, how to treat wounds, and I think one man had been shot in the chest, and somebody put a credit card over the wound and taped it down, and it saved his life. So all of our administrators have been trained in that. We want to continue to add to what we've done, and that includes the window film and other security enhancements. I don't want to really talk about those in open session, but just know that they're included in this budget. We've completed vape sensors in middle schools. The next stage is vape sensors in high schools. It's going to be fun when we turn those vape sensors on. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and prepare you. It's going to be wild when those vape sensors go on. Hopefully, though, that it will reduce the number, because seriously, y'all, one of the biggest fears that I have is kids are taking these marijuana vapes and they have no idea what's in them. It's only a matter of time before one of them has fentanyl in it. Thankfully, we have the ability to treat that when it happens, but it's something we hope never happens. It's scary. Paving, HVAC, roofing, anything that wasn't approved in the previous year, we can't issue new contracts. Okay? We cannot sign the athletic facility bid to start construction of stadiums at Beach, Hendersonville, and Portland, and it delays the process for the Merrill High tennis courts, the Gallatin track, and Station Camp track. Okay? Mr. Johnson provided you a letter from Biskin. We requested to see if they would extend it. There's zero guarantee that the contractor, have you passed that out yet, Chairman? Okay, sorry. Okay. Sorry, he's passing out a letter right now that we received from Biskin. And this letter basically states that that Biskin is open to possibly doing it, but they can't guarantee it because they work with dozens of subcontractors who have all bid materials and have turned down other jobs and are waiting to get started. So a process that big with so many moving parts, they can't guarantee that if we don't sign by the 17th, that they will extend it. They do honor that we've been a great partner to work with, and they would give us the maximum amount of flexibility, but at the end of the day, Biskin is a business. and they have a lot of mouths to feed and a lot of jobs to do. You know, for instance, there's a $40 million bid in Wilson County right now for a middle school, and that's definitely going to be, I would be stunned if they don't bid that. But so you have that letter at your disposal to read, but basically it confirms that there's no guarantee that they would extend beyond August 17th. Without a budget, we operate on last year's budget. That's if we go beyond September 1st. Okay, this is a new law and it has not been tested yet in Tennessee. This is what we've received from the comptroller. If we go to September 1st without a budget, we operate off last year's budget all year. So that means no athletic facilities, no raises. I'll let that sink in for a minute. That's the doomsday scenario, is that we don't have a budget by September 1st. All right, so where are we right now? Let me make sure, yeah, okay. Where are we right now? Chairman Schoaf offered to request an additional $5.4 million in non-recurring capital if we reduce our budget by $5.4 million. So basically, here's where we are. We're in a little bit of a standoff with the commission. All right, and here's the dilemma. It's hard for me to recommend to you to just pass a budget that reduces $5.4 million in revenue, because if that goes straight to the commission without that revenue guaranteed in some way to come back to us, they could pass that budget, that would become our budget, and we would forego the $5.4 million in capital, and we would have no leverage. That's as brass tacks as I can put it. The flip side is true too. The commission has no guarantee from us about the $5.4 million, and that's the impasse. Okay, so what do you do when you're standing there in a showdown like that? We either fight or we extend a hand and try to trust. I will say that I have the utmost level of confidence that Commissioner Schoaf is dealing in good faith, and he is working hard to get a majority of the county commission to approve $5.4 million in additional non-recurring capital. Okay, I think that there are some things that we can do tonight. We have a letter that Jeremy will pass out to you. Ms. Brown and Trevor found last, I can't even remember, did we meet last week?
We did.
Okay, last week when we met, we found in the law that in emergency circumstances, the county commission and the school board can both vote a resolution through and send it to the Department of Education that specifies that funds, even if they're allocated in a way that would normally make them maintenance of effort, we can forego maintenance of effort on that money to ensure, but it's only under certain emergency situations, which obviously the stadiums warrant. Mr. Presnell has talked to the Department of Education. He doesn't see anything that would hold them up from approving this. Mr. Sittler, the county attorney, has approved the wording in this letter. We don't have a commission vote yet because they haven't had the opportunity to actually vote on it and consider it. Part of my recommendation a little bit later would be that we go ahead and approve this letter and send it over. I think it's an act of good faith on our part to say that we understand that the $5.4 million is non-recurring capital, one-time funding. I think that's a good step to say that this is what our understanding is. I think it's very clear, but I think that we are in good standing. You know, I'm not going to lie. There are 8 to 11, probably 8 to 10 commissioners that I don't think will vote for this. I think that there are probably 7 or 8 that will never vote for a school budget. At least 5. That's not, I haven't talked to them. I don't know that. But there are some that have been on the commission for 6 years and they've never voted for a school budget even when it balanced. So I don't anticipate that changing. I do think that there are 14 or 15 that may actually vote to approve this money. And this helps us tremendously meet a large number of our needs. So I want to walk through, right, the revised budget that you have. Okay, so stop me if you have, before we do that, do you have any questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Wise.
thank you, sir. Sorry. It's difficult for me. I don't know about the other board members, probably not. They can probably read this letter and listen to you at the same time. I can't. Can you explain to us what's in this letter?
Which one, Mr. Wise? The one from, okay. This is why we pay Mr. Presnell and Mr. Sittler. Okay? Basically what it says is that the school board and the county commission both recognize that the $5.4 million would be non-recurring capital and not go towards maintenance of effort. Now, the county may just give us that. What it does is it starts a process where the problem that we've got is both the school board and the county commission were jammed by the deadlines to get the budget done. We knew this would be a tough year with tax appraisal year being on top of it and that September 1st deadline. Okay, so I want to be clear, this was going to be a messy year regardless, because anytime we have a tax appraisal year, and especially one where we have 77% average increase in property values in Sumner County, that makes the property assessor has not done, I mean, he's done a good job. There were a lot of appeals that he has to hear and rule on. So I don't want it to make it sound like this didn't get delayed because the tax assessor did his job. It just took time. The county commission is working hard to get a budget. You know, they're meeting the same pressures from each department. Everybody on the county general side is pushing for increases in raises and capital expenditures too. It's just the nature of the process. So what this does, it gives us the maximum amount of flexibility. Theoretically, the commission could put the $5.4 million anywhere they wanted. You know, like our previous budget had it in as other county revenue. This letter would have allowed that to work. Initially, we had hoped that they could roll with that budget. Like if budgets had been noticed for the 29th, our hope was that this letter would go to help us be able to consider the last budget that we passed, because we would be agreeing that that money was not maintenance of effort. We should be able to clean that up this time and just have it, we'll have that $5.4 million in the budget that I will recommend to you tonight. But I like just having that letter approved, because if we have to go back and forth at all, we're going to be really, really tight on that August 17th and that September 1st deadline. So any tool that we have at our disposal to speed that process up, I think makes a lot of sense. So, Mr. Wise, long answer, short question. It just says that both bodies have passed and approved by the Department of Education recognize that $5.4 million would not be maintenance of effort.
And you displayed a word a few minutes ago, the word trust, that was broken in half. And for 16 years I've sat up here and I've trusted our leadership all the way from when Miss Mary Ann Dursky was where Miss Brown sits. I want you to tell me, with the inclusion of this letter, which kind of sounds like it's, let's call it a side deal that makes everything else at least appetizing somewhat. So is that your feeling? Are you comfortable as much as possible if we get the letter approved by both parties and this board approves this adjusted budget tonight? Are you comfortable with that? Sending that to the county commission with this letter as?
Yeah, if I can, I am comfortable with what my recommendation is going to be. So if I can run through the budget first, Mr. Wise,
okay,
then I'll show you what my recommendation is, because I think that'll address some of these questions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. And you may address this almost just term aloud. Will this sit in the commission's capital? Will the 5.4 be totally ours to decide and use as we need, or is this going to sit in the commission?
Yeah.
And we have to have everything approved by them to spend?
It will sit in the commission, Ms. Hayes, but it does not require their approval.
Okay.
We've done this before with bond money and other money. Like we sent $8 or $9 million over for White House Intermediate. And basically the POs go to Mr. Lawing instead of Ms. Brown. What's that? And we've done this with buses before. We used to keep textbooks. We've done this over the years a number of times. It's just it's really an accounting measure. You know, I've shared with I've shared with Chairman Schoaf that I'll be happy to come over and share the details of any project that we're doing. We've already done that. So it does sit in the commission. It will sit on the commission side, but the POs will be paid by Mr. Lawing, and really our books are all audited by the same people. So it's just it's an accounting process more than anything.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So with that said, let's jump into this budget book. Okay. Let's start on page 1.
Oh my goodness.
It's a good teacher. School starting. We'll start on page 1.
We didn't put our name at the top of that.
If you'd ever actually had me as a teacher, we never started on page 1. I know that will shock y'all. I don't know if my new ADHD treated self may have started on page 1, so thank you, Adderall. All right, if you'll look there, we'll jump back to this as you want. Ms. Brown has created some lines to make this easier to read. So if you look at page 1, right there at the middle of the page, total funds budgeted for the capital budget. We typically have not put that on our budgets, but I like this line because I think it's really clear and it shows that we're budgeting $22.9, almost $23 million in capital there. If you notice, an important thing to notice there is that covers, that provides cover for the stadium projects, and then gets us way down the road to be able to bid and get the Gallatin track. Okay, I want to be clear. I meant to mention this earlier. The athletic facilities and the Gallatin track are non-negotiables in this budget. We waited far too long to do the Gallatin track, and it's time to do it. We owe that to Gallatin. We owe it to Ms. Hawkins, who has been incredibly patient, and we're gonna get that done. So, everything else even, those projects we can do. I want the 5.4 million because it lets us do it helps us do, because like what we really want to do at Gallatin is, in addition to just building a track, we want to look at that as potentially being a future visitor side stands if we decide at some point to. Let me be really clear, because I know this is a touchy subject in Gallatin and Portland. So let me say this, because I've said it a million times, but I'm going to say it a million more times. We are not talking about ever destroying the historic stadiums in Sumner County. There will always be a place for the historic stadium in Portland and Gallatin. I'll be honest, I think White House is very happy to give the historic stadium back to the city of White House. I'm almost positive of that. But the other two we're going to absolutely preserve. But we also need to look. We need to look at what's best for those two campuses moving forward. And we want the maximum amount of flexibility. We want to build a state-of-the-art track like we have at Hendersonville, Liberty Creek. We want to build that at Gallatin High School, but we also want to look down the road, because we will save a significant amount of money if we go ahead and build the visitor side stands. Well, that includes the lighting and fencing and a lot of things that are really needed on Gallatin's campus. Like if you look at the beach plans, for instance, Beach's facilities evolved over a long period of time, and they were built by booster clubs and the foundation. And so while the facilities are very nice, it's missing a lot of things like sidewalks, handicap accessibility, lighting in key places, bathrooms and stuff like that. And this project will address a lot of that, and that's what we want for Gallatin's main campus as well. So that to me, is something that we want to move the needle on in this year. I'll put that on record, knowing that, like that's a commitment. I talked to Dr. Becker today and assured him this is something that, I don't get to vote on. It's going to be my strongest recommendation to the school board moving forward. And I think that I'm just expressing the will of all 11 school board members on the Gallatin track. Anybody speak up if I'm not, but I feel pretty confident that that's where we all are. So that's shared there. You'll also look that Ms. Brown put at the bottom another line that's not typically there, is total funds budgeted, the $412,821,725, and you can see that reflects the reduction. If you look at the budget we approved last time, that includes a reduction of $5.43 million. All right, flip to page with me, if you will, to page 5. Okay? So if you will look, 4275 right there at the bottom of the local taxes. I apologize for you in the viewing audience and watching at home. There is no exciting way to do this, so I'm just going to plow through it. Okay? The schools get a portion of mixed drinks. So at the end of this meeting, I encourage everyone to go to your local drinking establishment and have one or two. Kidding. Trying to make it exciting. So for a long time, Mr. Lawing found this, I think around 2018, 2019, that cities were supposed to give the schools a portion of the mixed drink tax, and they never had. And so we worked out an agreement for 5 years to let them pay that back. So it's made it really kind of hard to project that. So we think that what the actual revenue will come in is what Ms. Brown had in there last time. But Mr. Lawing, you know, what we've talked about, the reason that we built reserves on the county and the school board side is because Mr. Lawing projects revenue conservatively, which is 110% the way you always want to project revenue. You always want to undershoot your revenue, because what you don't want to do is overshoot your revenue and get to February and have to start cutting stuff. So we think that $436,000 will come in higher, but we also wanted to make it reflect what Mr. Lawing has projected on the county side. So there's a change there. Okay, that's about, I believe, $196,690, okay, from last time. All right, if you go down to $43,990, other charges for services, that's up $70,000. Ms. Brown, I'm trying to remember what that is on $43,990, why that went up $70,000. Looking at trends as we get to the end of the year. We're close to having our books closed, okay? So those are two changes there. If you go to page 6, we've got some more trend changes. If you'll look at 44,130, that's trending up 20,000, and that's just a trend as we close out the books. Down at the bottom, 44,570, 300,000. We increased that local revenue because we've had that in other years, and we had that as a zero this year. Looks like we'll have that again, and so Ms. Brown added that back in. Let's see, 43, yeah, we've talked about that. Okay, if you will flip over to page 32, this is where you're going to get into, we're going to jump around a little bit, backwards and forwards, so I apologize. This is probably the one with the most changes, so I'm going to walk through these a little bit. These are the changes to get to the, primarily to get to the 5.4 million in reduced capital. Now, this does not mean that when the 5.4 million comes back that we'll have to look at that and see exactly how we want to allocate those capital projects. These are the reductions that we made. 72,127.35 health equipment. That's decreased by $185,000. 72,710.729 transportation equipment. That's down 115,000. Hang on, I have to get a piece of paper so I can track this. Okay, 76,100.707 building improvements has been decreased by $1 million. 76,100.711 furniture and fixtures has been reduced by 150,000. Transportation equipment 76,100.729 decreased by 600,000. 76,100.790 other equipment by 700,000. Other construction 76,100.791. It's been decreased by 2.5 million. And then other capital outlay, right under there, 799, has been decreased by 100,000. Okay? If you'll flip back to page 31. All right, $73,400, $599. Other charges, it's going up by $19,353. This is not significant, but it's a little chafing, so I want to explain it. So the state advertised that they increased the pre-K budget from $117,000 a classroom to $121,000 a classroom. First time since 2014 they've increased the allocation. We received that news. We're somewhat happy because it was a little bit of money. But then we received a letter about 2 weeks later, a week or two later, that said, hey, we're shifting the funding formula to TISA. So it's going from 25% local contribution to 30% local contribution. So other districts did worse than us. Ours only went up $19,353. But part of the need for a reserve is the fact that as we're working out all the nuances of TISA, as new rules come on, every one of these rules seems to cost us money. So we gotta be prepared to absorb some of those. If you'll flip to page 21. There's two changes. If you look at 72, 310, 331, Ms. Brown has checked our trends on legal. We're trending under the $800,000 that we budgeted each year for legal. So she felt comfortable reducing that by $100,000. And then our workers' comp. She had projected what we thought our workers' comp would go up, but remember, we're increasing compensation. I meant to say this earlier. Our total compensation package is, I believe, $29.3 million increase. So when you do that, when you raise salaries that much and someone gets hurt or injured and goes out on workman's comp, it costs more money. So when we got the final bill today, our workers' comp went up $140,000. Okay? And we're going to flip now to page 8. And I'm going to yield to Ms. Brown to explain this one. And it's going to be clear.
So I wanted to explain a little bit about the reserve balance. So on page 8 is really where a lot of that detail of that reserve resides in our budget. And like Dr. Langford said, I did try to add some additional lines to the front of the budget. And you'll see some of those referenced back here in the reserve because how they're being funded. But so they are the same numbers because you'll notice that we are using part of our reserves to balance our budget and our operating, and we're also using a part of our reserve to fund our capital. And so I wanted to make sure everyone understood why those numbers had shifted based for the previous budget. So once our operating revenue went down by that $5.4 million that the county commission had asked us to decrease, that decreased our operating revenue. But our expenditures were decreased in capital, but our operating expenditures stayed the same. So the amount you see on that front page, on page 1, for the reserves, fund balance for operating budget, that increased. But it increased because of what I just explained, that our expenditures came out of capital and our revenue came down. But you'll also notice on the page 1, we'll also refer to page 8 because they're both on there, that the capital budget went down. So the amount of reserve used to balance the budget in operating went up because that revenue went down, and the amount in capital went down because we reduced the actual capital budget. It was just where the expenditures were located in operating versus capital budget. So I didn't want anybody to say, oh, look at there, we found some money. I want you to go to page 8. And if you'll look on page 8, and if you check it with the budget that you all approved on in June, if you look at the 79,100 line, the committed for education, the $27 million. Make sure I'm looking at the new budget, not the old budget. I'm looking at the old budget. Let me look at the new one. You'll see the $33,197,770. And then that's for the committed for education. If you look, that references that same number on page 1. That's what is being used from our reserve balance to balance our operating budget. That's the difference between our revenue and our operating expenditures. The next line you'll see is the $22.9 million. That is also what you'll see on the front cover. That is the reserve that we're using to fund our capital budget. If you'll come on down to the bottom, required reserve of $11,519,000 and the undesignated fund balance of $4,478,000. If you add all four of those numbers up on both budgets, they're the same. There's no new reserve. It's just changed between capital and operating. So I want to make that very clear. That is not plugged. That balances our operating budget. And the other number also is what we're using to fund our capital budget. And so that is not a plug number. It is not, we don't just change it. It is based on our expected reserve and then those amounts allocated accordingly. So if you add those four numbers up and you compare, actually if you add all of those numbers up, the other ones just didn't change, those four happened to shift a little bit, you're going to come up with the 72, 182, 181 on both budgets. So I wanted to be very clear that because it does look like on the front page that the operating budget reserves went up by with that 33 million. Because it is increased, but the capital went down. So the total reserve did not change. And that's very important because there was a lot of discussion about rebudgeting reserves and a lot of different conversations. Just want to be very clear on that. Any questions on that?
Thank you.
All right, I wanted to run through a couple. The other thing that I did want to, the other talking point that I've heard that I want to address is that we haven't done anything this year. Okay, I want to address that because I wanted to give you an idea of what we did. If we talk about not athletic facility projects last year, the board approved, and we've either completed or we're in the process of completing almost $14.4 million in capital projects. This includes everything from the Beach High Annex HVAC upgrade, cafeteria furniture at Ellis Middle, library furniture at Ellis Middle, Gallatin, part of the Gallatin High School stadium fence, air conditioning the small gym and the auditorium at Gallatin High School, a door project at Gallatin High School, furniture at many schools, the science labs at Hendersonville, the cooling tower at Jack Anderson, Madison Creek HVAC and gutters, Merrill Hyde paving, whiteboards at Beach Elementary and Millersville, Portland High roof, Rucker Stewart, Station Camp High School, LED lights, a LED sign at Schaefer, the gym roof at Station Camp, new gym floor at Station Camp, part of the Station Camp High soccer building, classroom furniture at Venus Stewart, some paving at Watt Hardison, the Westmoreland Middle cooling tower that I love because it's older than me when we replaced it, White House High School HVAC at the White Building and at the Annex, network infrastructure at our new schools, Polaris Rangers for the athletic trainers, paving here at the central office. If you want to draw rain, try to pave this parking lot. It will be paved as soon as we get some dry days. Flooring projects at Beach Elementary, Guild, Howard, Indian Lake, Westmoreland Middle, Ellis Middle, and then 12 school buses. We also, if we jump to the athletic projects, $683,000 at Beach for civil engineering, geotech, architect, and bleacher design. $512,000 at Gallatin. That includes architect and civil engineering for the track. $45,000 for the recentering of the football field. $27,000 for the goalposts, and then $156,000 for the sports facility loft and HVAC, the athletic trainer room, sports laundry and storage, and existing stadium enhancements. $563,000 at Hendersonville High School, again like Beach, for civil engineering, geotech, architect, and bleacher design. $66,000 at Merrill Hyde for studying on the tennis courts, $278,000 at Portland for the new for the field lighting. We had to replace a light, public restrooms, the new restrooms, and then the design fees for the architect, geotech, civil, and bleacher design. $107,000 at Station Camp for their track, and then Westmoreland 11,300. They have a little bit more that they weren't able to spend this year that will come back to them. And I want to reiterate this because I think it's something worth highlighting. $1,264,000 invested in middle school band programs, close to $100,000 per school, and then of course $2 million for the rental bleachers that we have at Beach, Hendersonville, and Portland, and then the press box purchases. So that's a total of that 15.8 million, 5.5 million, a bit over 5.5 million. So in addition to everything else we did last year, we spent about $20 million on capital projects, athletic and non-athletic, to address the needs of our school community. So I would say that we've done quite a bit over the last year to prove that we're good stewards. And I want to jump back. I want to reiterate this again. Since February, March, Chairman Schoaf and I began talking about the budget. He's dealt with me in good faith every step of the way, and I think he's worked hard to try to get an agreement. I think he's totally on board, just as he came over here and shared last week, to try to work hard to get the $5.4 million in additional capital. I think that we need to take an act of trust and extend a budget to the county commission, but contingent trust. Because I think what my recommendation would be is that we pass the revised budget that Ms. Brown and I walked through, contingent on the county commission approving an additional $5.4 million in non-recurring capital. So what this would mean is that the commission would have to vote first to approve $5.4 million in capital for the school system, and then this budget would go into effect to be passed. They can't strip us of they'd have to give us the $5.4 million in capital before this budget is able to be approved. I do think that Mr. Schoaf is acting in good faith. My recommendation would also be that the school board also has to protect itself, because the $5.4 million is vital in terms of meeting the needs of our school system next year or this coming year and future years. I would also recommend, I didn't put this on the slide, my recommendation would also be to approve the letter that Mr. Sittler and Mr. Presnell have looked over about maintenance of effort.
Dr. Langford, we've got a question.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made to accept the director's recommendation, second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Mr. Green.
Dr. Langford, thank you for taking so much time to go over all of this. I'll say it publicly, a number of times I thought that Commissioner Schoaf's compromise was reasonable. I'm not as confident as you are that there's 13 votes for this. How does it work? And I've read this letter. How does it work to make it contingent? Because if you send over a budget that's less than $5.4 million, do they not just have the authority to approve that budget and then say we'll talk about this agreement later? And then a second question, in the agreement it says it has to be approved by the Tennessee Department of Education. You know, bureaucracies are often a pretty slow moving ship. Mm-hmm. How long would that process actually take?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Grant, those are great questions. I think the first is that the way the 2012 Act reads is, we checked this with Mr. Lawing yesterday. The way the 2012 Act reads, it doesn't say that we have to present a budget, it says that we present a proposal. So our proposal would be, here's our budget with the contingency that we receive the $5.4 million in capital. Mr. Lawing was comfortable with that. The letter, I think, the letter was more applicable when I was going to originally ask, because also by the 2012 Act, we can request our budget to be heard within 10 days of it being rejected. So if the county commission had been able to hear budgets on July 29th, I was going to suggest to the board that we request to have that budget heard with this letter, because originally, when we had that money in there for other county revenue, we could have used this letter to counteract that revenue, and it would have helped us move faster to get it done. I still think the letter sends a sign of our intent to the county commission. I also think that, I've been in enough of these budget dances to know that you want every tool of flexibility available. If we hit some kind of little impasse between now and then, I'd like to have the flexibility to be able to, to maneuver to keep the, where the budget doesn't change. It's basically what the board approves. But if it needs to shift something where we can say it's not maintenance of effort, we've got that flexibility because we will approve this letter. The commission can approve it. And I believe it's a formality at the Department of Education. I didn't get the impression that it was going to take very long to get that approved there.
Okay, so, when I've looked at the same list of commissioners that I'm sure you've looked at over and over and over again. When I look at it, I say there's probably 10 yes votes and probably 10 hard no votes. And there's probably 4 that I would say could go either way. And I've talked to a lot of people who've talked to people who have, kind of said that 3 of those 4 right now no's. So that gives us 11 yes votes. Have you? I know you said you've not tried to reach out to the ones that the 5 or 6 that have never voted. You claim never voted for a school budget. I don't know if that's true, but have you reached out to the ones that you think might be swayed, that usually don't agree with you on things?
I will talk to anybody. So I haven't reached out. I mean, I haven't directly reached out. I know that some. I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but I know that some have indicated that they're open to it. So I'd prefer not to. I'd like to have those. I will absolutely talk to every.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask who you've spoken with and what they said or anything like that. But we're talking. It just like Mr. Wise said at our last meeting. We're talking about people's lives, and I know, once again, I think it's a great compromise. I think Mr. Schoaf was very creative in this compromise. I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying, testing the waters and playing a political game of chicken makes me nervous, and I would just like to hear something that, the odds of what this actually passes the commission and doesn't come back, because in May when we sent the budget, there was the discrepancy of the other $7 million that listen, I'll take a step back. I was as happy as I could be when I learned that the chairman of the budget committee was having conversations with our director of schools, and there was kind of a gentleman's agreement on the numbers. And then on the same end, I was very disappointed when my director of schools, who used to be a county commissioner and used to be the chairman of the county commission, didn't realize that certain revenue in our budget was still considered part of the maintenance of effort. And it kind of threw us into chaos again. And then, we were kind of getting signals that if we added the $5.4 million in June, it would be rejected. And then once again, I credit Mr. Schoaf in coming up with this very clever, creative compromise, not to add to our maintenance of effort, which, as he said in that budget meeting as well, last week, that if they did add the $5.4 million to the maintenance of effort, it would 100% trigger a tax increase next year. He said that's what the math said. But I don't know. I'm not saying I'm going to vote against this. I'm just saying I think we really need to have a serious discussion on the betting odds at this point, because the last thing I want to do is send something that fails on August 12th and then comes back to us, and then that doomsday scenario possibly takes place. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, if you referenced me being chairman of the county commission, I steered 7 budgets across the finish line. So I understand, because ultimately at the end of the day, I won't go into all the history, but you always have commissioners because they're tasked to represent their district, and they're trying to do their due diligence, and they don't want to vote. I mean, because as you said, this affects people's lives and it affects the lives of their constituents. Commissioner Mo Taylor and I don't know. I think we voted together on notaries most of the time. Beyond notaries, I don't know that Mo and I voted together a whole lot, but every time we were at a Westmoreland event, Mo and I would sit down and talk, and I would have considered Mo a friend, and I was heartbroken when he passed away untimely. I've had conversations on budget stuff before. I've had people hold out over $10,000 to each volunteer fire department. We got that worked out. I've worked out disagreements on hurt feelings and things said in committee meetings. I've worked with each of the constitutional officers to resolve budget. I have quite a bit of experience in getting a budget across the finish line. I mean, I think you're right to see, like, if you ask me if it makes me nervous, I always like to have 16 votes lined up to approve the budget when I went in. There's not 16 votes on this, just to be completely transparent. I am pragmatic. Like, I don't think it's any great secret that Jeremy and I don't see eye to eye. I will say that I thought Jeremy Mansfield ran a great meeting when he filled in as chairman of the commission. I texted him the next morning. I don't know if he was excited to see that or not, but I told him he did a great job, because it's not easy being chairman of the county commission. I'll buy Jeremy breakfast if you'll give a hearing for this $5.4 million. I'll sit down with any of them. And honestly, I've got a really good relationship with most of them. I'm not gonna lie, there are a few that don't care for me, and that's okay. They're representing their constituencies in the way that they think is best, and I respect that. But I think that I've also found, Mr. Graham, that when you're doing a budget in May and June, especially if you go into contingency or into continuation, there comes a time when you're staring at the deadline that people begin to get really serious about what they're doing. They begin to really weigh out the ramifications of what it is. And I think at that point, people then begin to look and say, this is a $412 million budget on the school side. We're talking about $5 million. Am I going to hold up when we're sitting there with 13, if I'm a commissioner, we're sitting there with 13 million unallocated dollars and another 18 or 19 designated for the highway department that the highway department won't be able to spend this year. There's a significant amount of capital money sitting right there. We are not going in and asking them or forcing them to raise taxes. We're operating within a budget that utilizes our reserve funds, but then also works to create a budget that does not require or force the county commission to raise taxes, which I think is a stated goal of all 24. If you remember, when we did that first budget workshop, the reason I gave for not going to $50,000 for teachers and $18 an hour for all of our classified pay is that it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't something it would force a tax increase. I would have been happy to have done that, but I don't think it was fiscally responsible or aligned with where not just 13 votes in the commission would have gone, but probably 24 votes would have gone. So I try to be pragmatic and realistic, and I can't guarantee that we'll get 13 votes on this budget. But I do think that as we get closer to August 12th, a lot of people will start looking at this and think, it's really not unreasonable. I think, I've said this in here before, Commissioner Schoaf, I think, has the hardest job in Sumner County. It's hard to do a budget because Ms. Brown has that here, and I guess me indirectly, but she usually takes care of most of these before it gets to me. You have to say no a lot. And it's not just that you're saying no to things, because I don't think there's a lot of frivolous spending in Sumner County government. Our constitutionally elected officers, Toby Ellis is a fine man that leads well. Sonny Weatherford is a fine man that leads well. Our trustee, she's wonderful. Everybody over there that's elected runs their budget to the absolute best of their ability, and typically they put money back in the county coffers. I think they all do great work, and so I think that as you're sitting there as the budget chair, you're having to tell really good people no on things that are perfectly justifiable, but we have to live with the budget dollars that we have. But, you know, in doing so, I think that there will be a certain amount of, you know, I always felt this way. I had the privilege of having Kevin Pomeroy and Chris Taylor as budget chair when I was commissioner or chairman of the county commission. And I knew at the end of the day that Chris and Kevin had spent hundreds and hundreds of hours meeting with everybody in county government and working with them through multiple budget hearings. And Commissioner Schoaf has done that. And I think that there will be commissioners that are on the bubble that are going to sit there and think, like, gosh, you know, Matt's a solid guy and he has done tremendous work. It's going to be really hard for me to vote no on something if he recommends it. And I think he's earned that trust and that respect from his colleagues on the commission side. So when he tells me that he's confident that he can get it done, I don't have any reason not to believe him. And so, you know, it's not 100% by any stretch of the imagination. Is there risk? Yes. But is it manageable risk? I think so.
Mr. Lancaster.
All right, so basically, worst case scenario is they don't approve this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to us again, and at that point, we're looking at, we'll miss our deadline on our bids, have to rebid it, have to restructure, and send something back before the end of the month, correct?
Yeah, I think I would say one step before there would be to talk to Biscuit to see if they would extend the bids.
Right.
I think that would be very reasonable. What we would just know, a second part, you know, Mr. Graham mentioned one component of risk. A second component of risk is that Biscuit could walk away and say, sorry.
Right.
You know, they are looking every day that they go past the deadline at the end, they're looking at $5,000 a day in liquidated damages.
So we have basically said, okay, we are doing what the budget committee suggested. We're removing 5.4 million from this. We're then asking for it as a separate contingency, which then the commission would control to a certain extent that money, or at least the budget chairman would be in control of that. So in other words, our budget would still be our budget. We would be able to do everything we needed to do with raises, facilities, gallons and track, everything like that. But if it's like, oh, we've got this $5.4 million, so whereas we took purchasing new school buses out of the budget. So if we needed to purchase a new school bus, we have to call or say, hey, finance guy.
Yeah, Mr. Long.
Mr. Long.
Yeah.
Thank you. We need to buy 3 buses. Can we use $300,000 or $450,000 of our 5.4? It would never necessarily come into our budget.
Mm-hmm.
It would be controlled. Would it have to be voted on by them or just approved by him as a capital?
Yeah. He would have to. It would be just like the way that Ms. Brown does POs, right? Like, believe it or not, we have some people sometimes that submit POs that are incorrect and try to take things out of the wrong line or something like that. He would have to check to make sure, like if it's a capital item, he'd have to check to make sure it meets capital. Basically the same thing that Chris Harrison and Ms. Brown do, David Lawing would do, and he's done it for years on a number of other projects.
Would that be considered a budget transfer to us? So it's not like it would have to go through the committee, the education committee or anything like that. It's just kind of a little special fund that's over here that we, okay.
For several years, I think it was about 2.9 million, if I remember correctly. I may be off. It may have been 2 million, but several years we did paving with it. We did our bus purchases for years. We did some textbook purchases, and Mr. Lawing just issues those POs off of his books. The transfer was discussed, as
Right.
Mr. Langford said, which is kind of the reason for this, but this budget is not transferring those funds into ours. It would stay on Mr. Lawing's capital budget.
So really, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're doing what the budget committee recommended,
Mm-hmm.
but coming up with a contingent request to say, hey, of that 13 million that you have unallocated, please allocate 5.4 for us in a special account, fund, whatever you want to say, and as needed throughout the year, we're going to use that to purchase buses, purchase pave parking lots, put a new
Athletic facilities.
air conditioner somewhere, something like that. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lancaster, Mr. Gregory?
I called a point of order on Mr. Lancaster.
What's
He
the
mentioned
point
that the 5.4 was approved by, or was recommended by the budget committee. It was recommended by the chairman and it was voted down by the budget committee. So one person recommended it, not the whole budget committee, correct?
Well, they recommended that we remove. They voted to send it back to us and recommended that we remove it from our capital. That's why I say they recommended we removed it. So,
Mr. Gregory?
Our county executive, Mr. Isabel, on the Portland radio station yesterday morning. I'm not sure if he said he thought he had at least 13 votes, or he was working hard to get 13 or more votes. Now, that was on the Portland radio station, so I don't think it's a secret. So I think I'm taking him at his word that he thinks he does have that meeting.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Mr. Gregory. Again, there's risk there, 100%. I'm trying to think, like I've been watching county commission budgets since I came back to Sumner County Schools in 2009. I don't remember a commission ever voting against a recommendation of the budget chair. Because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think most commissioners look at that and say, that's the one person in this body that is spent, because the budget chair has to spend hundreds of hours meeting with everybody to get a budget across the finish line.
Mr. Wise?
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request that you go to Ms. Andrews. I've already spoken on this once, so if you don't mind. There you go.
So, I understand there's apprehension about making this request. I myself am concerned. I feel like the school board has taken steps, you know, every chance we've had, okay, what can we do? I feel like the conversation within the board has been, we want to get this done, how do we do it? Looking at state law, looking at the 2012 Act and so forth, and figuring out a method and a plan on how we can do both and. Because I feel like that at the end of the day, I can speak for myself only, that when it's come to raises and us addressing the athletic needs, it's always been both and for me. I feel like we have spent too much time in this county asking either or. That's where we got to where we are to begin with, is it was year after year after year, you can pick raises or you can pick infrastructure. We're in the business of educating students, and year after year we've chosen students because that's who we're here to serve. We're in a place that we have the money to do both. We should do both. It doesn't require a tax increase. The money's there. I feel like Mr. Chef came over. Again, I mentioned it when he came over. I don't recall a time that that's happened before, that a budget chair has come over to speak directly with the school board. That spoke volumes to me. It made me gain a lot of respect for Mr. Shove and his efforts, because I do feel like he is actively looking for ways for us to accomplish both. A frustration that I have is, it is no secret that there are members within our commission that we can all agree on are going to be hard no's. We all know that there are members of the commission that are going to be hard yeses to support, and then there are those that are in the middle. And it's frustrating to me that I know that there are members that sit within the school board who associate and call themselves friends with those who sit in the middle. And my question is, are you having those conversations with them to ask them to support our budget? Because if you're having the conversations to ask them to support our budget, How do you come here and then say, I don't know that they're there?
Ms. Andrews, if you would direct your
Yes, sir, I do
comments
apologize.
to the chair.
So that is my concern is, are we being sabotaged within to not have members of this board asking the members of the commission to support us? We're taking the steps. We're making good faith efforts. We've reduced our budget by $2 million. We said we'll take the 5.4 out and we'll let y'all write the POs. The school board has done the steps necessary. We're asking for the commission to join us. We can do both and. We can give our employees the much needed raises, and we can address our facility needs so that we are on par with our peer counties. We had 2 students from Beach High School this past week that signed with the MLB. That's the kind of caliber of students that we have. We have students play for the NFL, but their facilities are lacking. Sumner County, it's time to decide. Do you support education or do you not?
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one housekeeping thing, and then I just want to make some comments in general about budget and school board service and that kind of thing. So if you'll allow me about an hour and a half, I would appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. The housekeeping part is I have a son who is an employee of Sumner County Schools. Matter of fact, he's in attendance tonight, and I appreciate him bringing me down here with that knowledge. And we're talking about budget, and we're talking about his income, though his finances do not affect my finances, and so, but I will still be voting out of my conscience. So just to make that clear. The second thing that I think about is the word trust. I'm a realtor, Mr. Brewer's a realtor, and I'm sure he would agree with this, that in my business, the word trust is a huge, huge word. The word trust means so very much. And I think, first off, it's a shame that we, as a school board, some of our members don't have trust in some of the members of our funding body. And we need to work on that. We need to work on that. I've got 1 more month on this board. So some would say, why does he care? Well, I do. I don't know why I do, but I do. There will be a meeting of the county commission in the next few weeks to discuss the school system's budget. And I know from here, my comments need to be addressed to the chairman, and that's what I'm going to try to do, but I want the audience to listen to me, please. This audience who's here tonight asking us to vote in favor of this budget, and in having some conversations before our meeting, this audience's problem is not around this half moon. This audience's problem is over there on the other side of town. This audience needs to grow itself by about 10 times and be at that meeting. Be at that meeting. Wear your school colors. Wear that shirt that says bleachers and teachers, or teachers and bleachers, or wear those things and show that enthusiasm, and let's all work together, because what we're doing affects a lot of people's lives. That little couple I talked about last week whose mortgage is still not approved because of the debt to income ratio, still not approved. and they'd love to get in their new home. And I'd love for them. They're not my clients. They may be Mr. Brewer's clients, I don't know. but I'd love to see them get in their new home. But doggone it, work with us, County Commission, work with us. And let's help these people. We're all one Sumner County. Let's act like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Lacy?
Oh, no. Wow.
You know, like I said, I've just been sitting here trying to suck this in, just trying to figure out what my district would want, the majority of my district would want. You know, I asked you last week, Dr. Langford, what is the cost associated with Portland High School? What do you know the total value of the work that will be done there?
Well, the Biskin had the two that completed the bid, they had the option of choosing to bid each one individually or collectively all three. So when they both bid all three. So when they do that, that's because they're buying all the materials at once, doing all that kind of stuff to get discounted scale. So they don't provide you with detail. They give you on those bids, like I showed you last time, they give you like a per square foot cost. So you could look at that and kind of calculate.
But basically, you can't give me a cost for what Portland High School will cost, Beach or Hendersonville will cost.
No, because that's not how the contractor had the contractors had the option of bidding them all three together or each individually. Other contractors could have bid each one individually, but none did. So the bid that we have is for all three jobs.
Well, you know, when they bid it, I guess was it last October they bid it, and they actually bid it by each line item. They had a cost for Portland, they had a cost for Beach High School, and a cost for Hendersonville. But this time they bid it less. I mean, they bid it, what is it, $8.2 million more, but they didn't give us a line item cost for each school.
Well, that's a different thing. Like that, what you had in October was an estimate by our architect.
Gotcha.
The architect does the bid documents, but there weren't two sets of bids. There was an estimate by our architect firm, and then, as we mentioned, that was in October. As they met with the communities and we worked on the projects. I mean, I think we voted on the, when you saw like what those renderings look like, I mean, they reflect what Beach High School, Hendersonville High School, First Step at Portland want before we look, for the future. It captured what the communities wanted, and that's what's reflected in those bid documents.
I know you mentioned earlier, you said what's best for our people. If you had to choose to pick one or the other, would you pick raises or would you pick the $5.4 million?
We got a budget that does both, Mr. Lacy.
I understand that, but I'm asking you a question. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But if you had to choose one or the other, which would you choose?
I would choose to allocate the $5.4 million out of the 13 that the commission's sitting on.
Over teachers getting raises?
No, that's not what I said. I said we've got a budget that provides for $29.3 million in new compensation in addition to the athletic facilities. That's what I would vote for if I had to vote.
Like I said, my wife is a teacher in Sumner County Schools. Per board policy, I have to state that my wife is a teacher. Like I said, I have a personal interest in this budget. My wife is the teacher, and she will, whether we get a raise, the teachers get a raise or do not get a raise, she will be affected. But I'm not going to vote just for my wife, but I'm going to vote for all 5,000 employees in our county. But the whole thing about the teachers thing is it's unfair that we're playing chicken with teacher raises. It doesn't make our staff feel very secure when we're gambling for $5.4 million and they're stuck with last year's pay scale. I do not think that's fair. I don't think it's morally right. What if it doesn't pass? I mean, they're just stuck with last year's pay scale. I voted for this budget so far 2 times. But I do not think it's fair that we're gambling over $5.4 million. We're not going to give teacher raises unless we get our $5.4 million. I voted for stadiums every time, I believe. I wanted the kids in Beach, Hendersonville, Portland to have stadiums. But the way this has went about with stadiums, we're talking about trust. In October 10th, this is what I received. And, one of our things, it says phase 1 will be completed by July 31st, 2024. This is trust. This is when I believe we were asking for 15 point something million from the county commission so we could get our stadiums addressed. And you look at phase 1, you got White House that has several needs. You got Westmoreland that has several needs. You got Merrill Hyde that has several needs, but they're kind of pushed to the side and they didn't even get bid. Then you go to Station Camp, they need a track. You go to Gallatin, they need bleachers and a track. They need a track bad. I mean, they need it really bad. That got pushed to the side. And then when they actually did the bid, they did the bid for 15 million, and that included tracks, that included everything for 5 schools. And then somewhere from October till now, we decided just to work on 3 schools. I mean, transparency. We had tracks and everything else included in this. It was supposed to be done by July 31st this month, and we've not even really did much work on it. We still got portable bleachers up. And you want me to have trust. I want to have trust. And, you know, I question, if you look at the bid for, was it back in October?
That's not a bid, Mr. Lacy.
What's not the bid?
Nothing in
No,
October
that's
was a bid.
I guess the estimate. Well, anyways, if you look at the estimate, it included tracks and everything for what, around 15 million. Now you take everything out of it and you're just doing stadiums at 3 schools and it's $8.2 million more. Where is the transparency? What are we doing differently that cost $8.2 million and we're still not having tracks? We're not having anything else done at any other school. What are we doing differently?
We're meeting the community's needs, what they asked, and we're putting forth bid documents that follow all state laws. We took a little bit of a step back from the comptroller's decision. We stepped back and we're doing things that as quickly as we can, we're addressing all of our school facilities needs. And I think that we've seen that in the way that we've dealt every step of the way, and every vote that's been taken by this body and the buy-in from our principals and from our communities, I think reflects that. I can't make anybody trust me, but I think that I've answered every question more probably than any director of schools in the state of Tennessee. And I'm always happy, as I said at the commission back last October, I will always stand in front of them and take responsibility for every project. When I came in here in February and I yanked the Band-Aid off, the easiest political thing for me to have done would have been to say that we were still going to have bleachers open in August because we had school board races right around the corner and they were in doubt. But I stood in here and I said we're not going to have stadiums in August like we had hoped. I accepted responsibility for it, but I said I'm going to recommend to the board that we move with a plan that guarantees kids will have bleachers so they can play at home, unlike Cheatham County that's playing 10 away games this year because they had a bleacher collapse, and they're moving to not have any kind of rental bleachers or things like that. We felt, and I thought it was the will of the board and the will of this community and the communities in Sumner County, to allow our students to have as normal of an experience as possible when we face a setback. I'm all about transparency. I think everything that I've stated tonight has shown the transparency and openness that I'm willing to deal with. I would love to have all those things done by July 31st. Worked as hard as I could to get it done. But there's only so much I can do, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and if people choose not to trust me, at the end of the day, I can put my head on the pillow and live with that.
I understand it, but $8.2 million, we're getting a whole lot less. And the only thing that, and you don't have to answer it, but the only thing that you tell us, the scope of the project changed because of community members' input. What changed? I believe the people in District 11 have the right to know what changed. What did we add? What drove the cost up? Because before we were getting tracks, we were getting 2 tracks, we were getting a lot of other stuff, and now we're not getting it. So like I said, there's a lot of trust in the community that they don't trust us in politics in Sumner County. Like I said, I just personally, I'm offended. If we pass this budget, when we're holding teacher raises hostage for $5.4 million, I think that's morally wrong. I don't think it gives a good statement to our teachers, to our staff, our certified, classified staff. I think it's immoral. I think we should put it on a separate line item, and we should do this separately, pass a budget, and our teachers know that they'll have a raise. I'm sure it will pass the county commission if we just do the 7.5 million. Like I said, I wanted the kids, you know, when I voted for this in the past, I wanted the kids at Beach, Hendersonville, to Portland to have a stadium. I think it's the right thing to do. But I'm also concerned, if you look at the previous bid, I don't understand, if you get on our school board website, maybe I'm being a little bit picky, but there's kind of a thought in my community that the north end of the county kind of gets the crumbs. You know, Beach and Hendersonville, they're getting a really nice stadium. They're getting a really nice stadium. How come Portland Stadium isn't on here with a picture of how nice and grand it's going to be? I have a feeling that we're just kind of just barely getting them by. Like I said, I will not gamble with teacher raises. I think our teachers and our classified staff deserve better than that. And I also believe that we have $5.4 million in our reserves right now that we can use. We shouldn't have to gamble with teacher raises. That's the biggest thing. We have the money in our reserve funds that we can do this without holding teacher raises hostage. And like I said, my wife's a teacher, but I'm going to be voting no on this budget. I just think it's morally wrong to send this to the county commission, and we're guessing and hoping that we'll have 13 votes. So I'll be a no.
Mr. Lacy, I would point out that the county commission has not approved a tax rate yet. They had the entire month of June. We're on a continuation budget because the county commission is not considered a budget. They had no plans until we met to call a county commission meeting until August 26th. That was the regular scheduled meeting. So I would point out that the school board voted to approve its budget on mid-May, May 21st, sent another budget in June, and is prepared to vote on another budget tonight. So I would say that the school board has not acted to hold teacher raises hostage. We can't give those raises until the county commission approves a budget.
But like I said, we should try to send a budget that they'll approve. And you know, I'd like to make one more statement. District 4 made the statement that, you know, we need to get our athletic facilities in par with other school systems. You know, I was just, from my research, Robertson, Metro, Williamson, Rutherford, Lebanon City, Macon County pay more than Sumner County schools, their teachers. Why do we insist on being kind of last where we live for our teachers? I mean, they can go to Macon County. I was surprised that Macon County pays more than Sumner County schools with this pay increase. If you really wanted to improve stuff, I believe you'd want to pay your teachers more.
Ms. Lacy, Ms. Andrews?
Where to start? There may be other districts that are paying their teachers more. We talked about Robertson County. They're at 50, you're right. They also recently approved a tax increase. That's how they did it. It was a tax increase. So our county commission gonna approve a tax increase? Nope. Metro, their taxes, way higher than ours. Wilson County, they may, but you know what they pay for their benefits? 100% for the employee, nothing for dependents. Nothing.
Ms. Andrews, direct your step to the chair, please. Thank you.
Our benefit package is bar none. You know how I know that? Because I work in healthcare. You know the number of employees that I've seen over the last month that have had the opportunity to go to another county and said, and I don't want to leave Sumner County. I love Sumner County. They know our benefits are great. They know what our pay is. They know that they might get paid more somewhere else. But the support they receive in Sumner County, it's not always dollars. Benefits are huge. If you have a family, we pay 80% for all, whether you're employee only, whether you're employee married, whether you have a family coverage. That's huge. To then do that on top of raises, look at the other districts and see how many employees, how many open spots do they have. It speaks volumes to hear the number of openings and how low they are comparable. So while other districts may pay more as far as base salary, there's so many things that Sumner County offers. One-to-one clinic, you know, so many things. So it's not just, you can't just look at that one number. Speaking about the athletic facilities and wanting to take a gamble, here's the reality of the athletic facilities. There was a pre-bid meeting for these stadiums. 9 contractors showed up. You know how many contractors submitted bids? 2. So for us to say, oh, we'll risk it, we'll let the bids expire, we'll just rebid them. Who's to say we get another bid? The bid package was 800 pages. The contractors came out, they went to the pre-bid meeting, they got the documents, they went through and did all the work, they spent their time, they did the numbers. 2 submitted a bid. We've had 60 days. Right at 30, actually. We have about, 26, 25 more days left to get it approved before they expire. It's not on the contractors to expect them to either extend their bids or to do the whole thing all over again. That's irresponsible for us to ask to do that. Keep hearing about October, there being bids. There were no bids in October. 0 bids in October. What happened in October was the county commission kept asking, how much is this going to cost? Tell us how much it is. We need numbers. We're not going to move your 15.8 until we get numbers. So our architect gave rough estimate numbers. And at that time, it was strictly bleachers, bathrooms. Because we were under the assumption that we were going to be able to use a contract through the state that would expedite us and us be able to have the bleachers in time by July 31st. We learned that that was not the case, and at that point realized, okay, then let's have a serious conversation about doing it correctly the first time. Community meetings happened, needs were talked about, and the scope of the project did change. At Beach High School, I can tell you what it was. We went from bleachers and bathrooms to looking and realizing, if you've been to Beach High School, the main entrance for the football facility is up a hill that looks about like this. And you go through a ticket booth that the roof is literally rotting off. It's very difficult for handicap accessible people to enter that stadium. The parking, if you're going to do that, then you have to go around by the annex, and there's very limited parking. If you've been to a beach football game, the community shows up. It makes it very difficult for handicapped people to be able to access the stadium. It changes the entrance to the stadium. The grass area behind the stadium, between the stadium and the annex, what got added there was a parking lot. That will have spaces available, handicap spaces available for the people who want to come and enjoy a Friday night football game. It also addresses, on the visitor side, parking. It addresses there being a circular area for away buses to come and park so that they can have direct access to the visitor bleachers. It also pre-plans for when we build the track facility on the top of the hill, there will have to be parking there. Otherwise, it's a long distance for people to access what will be the track, hopefully at one point. That got added to the scope of work. We looked at it and realized, hey, we need to have some changing facilities for away teams on their side, and we need to have some locker room type space on beaches home side and so forth. Those are things that change with the scope of work, because if we're going to do it, let's do it right to begin with. Yes, we're looking at extra dollars, but it's going to be cheaper in the long run. You already have the crew out there. So in my family, we have a saying: you can do it right, do it light, or you can do it wrong and do it long. Hendersonville's the same. We've had these conversations. Dr. Langford has gone through and said they are getting facilities for changing facilities and places for the officials, for them to be able to have a spot, and changing the iron shelter, is that what it's called?
Iron bunker.
Thank you, I was close. I'm not as familiar with HHS, but changing those things to address the needs that have been put on the backs of the community for years, that just quite frankly, it's a lift for those people whose kids are going to be there for 4 years. As a community, let's invest in something that's going to last for 60 years, and it's going to last for generations to come. Those are the changes that have happened. In order to get those bids, it's taken a lot of time. You had to go through site work, you had to go through and get design work. There were lots of meetings. There was not just one, there were lots of meetings with the communities and saying, hey, we thought through this, hey, can we make this tweak? And then the architect had to go and prepare that, and then like I said, it was 800 pages of plans for them to be able to bid that out. Currently, we've had visits at the station camp, at Gallatin, believe Merrill Hyde as well recently, so that we can do this same thing. They're too big of projects to be able to try to do that all at one time. So those are in the process of getting the bid documents together as well, so that those projects can be bid. Then they have to go through the process of, they get bid, they're out for so long, they come back, we open them, the school board decides whether or not we approve it, yada, 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 and then you go through the process. It's not just, yes, let's build a track, and it's going to be done tomorrow. It's a process. That's just how the construction world works. Hopefully that answers some questions. Like, there was lots of people at the same meetings I was at. I don't have notes in front of me. That's just how it is. It's a long time coming in Sumner County. These are not extravagant asks. Not comparative. I've been to neighboring counties. I've seen what they're building. They're going to be nice, but they're not extravagant. We said Liberty Creek was the new standard. I remember when Liberty Creek opened, had a lot of people mad at me at Beach High School. Pretty sure I went through a whole football season sitting in the stands where people didn't speak to me. People I'd known for a long time. And it's not, as I've reflected back and realized, they weren't mad, or this is my assumption, because I haven't had the conversation, but this is because they're good people. It's not that they were mad that Liberty Creek got open. It's not that they were mad that Liberty Creek is nice. It's that for decades and decades and decades, we didn't put that same emphasis in the other schools. And now here we are and we can. And the money's there, and it doesn't cause a tax increase. And we're not holding teacher raises hostage because the money's there and it doesn't cost a tax increase. There's no reason we shouldn't ask for both. There's no reason that the county commission should not join with us and do this for the Sumner County community.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, just one more time, real quick. If this is voted down, we have time to we have 19 days until the end of August, until they have to meet again. So we could come back, have a second special called meeting, and adjust our budget as needed to finagle the 5-4 or whatever we have to do, because we've got a budget right here that would do what we needed to do. It's just basically we're taking a gamble on the 5-4, losing it or not losing it, potentially losing out on the bid that we currently have, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I need.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify also that it includes we haven't bid the Gallatin track yet, but it does also include the Gallatin track.
Mr. Gray.
I'd like to call the question.
I don't think we need it, but I think we're ready to vote. I don't see any other lights on but yours, so I think we're ready to go. Since Mr. Daniels is not here, all vote, there's only one vote tonight, so, and it still has to be a roll call vote. So, Mr. Johnson, I'll have you call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes?
You want to read it for us, please?
Absolutely. The motion is to approve the revised budget contingent on the county commission approving an additional $5.4 million in non-reoccurring capital, and we are also approving the proposed capital agreement between the board and county commission as presented by Dr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Chairman Brewer?
Before I vote, I would like to say that I also have a family member that will benefit from this. I am voting my conscience for what is good for the whole Sumner County schools, but I'll be voting yes.
Motion carries 9-1.
Motion carries. That is the end of the meeting. We are adjourned.